All right. Good morning again, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us here today for this webinar. Before we dive in, just want to take a quick look at where we're heading. So almost every organization that we talk to is already running AI agents somewhere. The hard part really is managing them. So today's session is about the control plane for agents, how you see them, how you govern them, and secure them. So before we jump into Agent 365, let's just briefly talk about agents themselves. I want you all to think of an agent as a digital co-worker rather than a chatbot. You give it a job, you give it access to specific data and tools, and it carries out tasks, processing a claim, forecasting demand, opening a work order, etc. Because it is acting with real permissions and data, it has to be managed like a person. It needs to be given an identity, an owner or a manager, an access review, and it should have an audit trail. That's really the shift and the focus behind today's session. Agents are easy to build, but they need a control plane so again, we can see, govern, and secure them. And that's what Agent 365 is built for. A single place for you to see every agent, control what it can access, and measure the value that it delivers. So over the next few minutes, I'll walk through readiness, some of the capabilities, and what adoption actually looks like in practice. So let's just start off with these simple questions. If you all can answer all of these confidently today, then you're already ahead of most organizations. First off, can you track and monitor all your agents, and do you know what they're doing? Not just the ones that IT has created, but all of them, including the ones that the employee built this week with their free agent builder. Inventory is also the easy part. Behavior is the more difficult and more important part. Knowing that an agent exists tells you nothing about the data that it accessed this morning. Next up, do you have the proper guardrails for the agents themselves and for the people who are interacting with them? So some organizations have a policy that they wrote down and they emailed to their users. Others have actual configurations enforced through Microsoft Security Services. So guardrails on the agents constrain what they're allowed to do. But you should also have guardrails on the people that constrain what they can ask the agent to do and what they're able to do with the response that they get. Third part, are those agents protected? Do they have the right access? Can they leak sensitive data? So an agent inherits exactly the permissions that you give it. So over permission an agent and you've built a really fast way to leak confidential or sensitive data. Think of a bank. Knowing that a servicing agent can read the core banking system is the easy part. But knowing which customer records it opened this morning, that's the part that survives an access review. That's where a permission list stops being enough. So here's the core idea that we're going to be going through, and it's pretty simple. You don't need a brand new stack to manage agents. The best approach is to extend the infrastructure that you hopefully already have, that you're using already to manage your users, your devices, and your data. So you already know how to onboard a person, give them an identity, assign them least privilege. We know how to monitor behavior, how to offboard users when they leave. Our agents need that exact same lifecycle. So we use the Microsoft 365 Admin Center as the central hub really for managing agents and their settings. We use Entra to give each agent its own identity and control their access to applications and resources. We use Defender to extend our existing threat protection and security posture management to these agents. And lastly, but probably most importantly, we use Purview to govern and restrict the data that the agents touch and the data that they create. We can also use Purview for compliance and monitoring agent interactions in detail. So for you all as IT and security technical persons, this means new capabilities without having a new console or without a new platform to learn. Your existing conditional access policies, for example, your data loss prevention rules, your existing audit process, they all now simply extend to include agents. So what does this actually buy your business or your organization? there are really four outcomes that I'll touch on here. First off, it's a faster path to deploying agents organization-wide. When you have your governance built in from the start, every new agent stops being a one-off approval project. Second, it becomes easier to plug these agents into your high-impact processes. So things like invoice approval or getting a new employee set up on day one. These everyday processes where delays can cost you real money and resources. The third point here is risk reduction. And most AI incidents aren't really dramatic attacks. They're things like misconfigurations, over-permissioning, simple user errors. So having consistent policies and a centralized monitoring environment removes a lot of these risks. And fourth, and this is the one that your executives might care about, it gives you the confidence to scale. So it's the difference between having 10 agents in test environments for months versus having 100 agents deployed in production by the end of the year, for example. So let's kind of set up the structure for the rest of the session. Agent 365.
Justin, we're not hearing you.
Hear me now?
Yes, we missed you for a good 2 seconds. So as you got into this slide, I think, yeah,
Okay.
I think you got, yeah.
Apologies. Okay. I was just going through the structure that we're going to be using for the rest of today's session. So there are these three main pillars: govern and secure. Observe really is about monitoring and managing your agents in real time. So knowing what you have, knowing what it's doing. Govern is more about the life cycle of your agents. So approval, policies, access controls, retirement, stuff like that. And secure is about protecting your agents, identity, data, different threats like shadow AI. So I'll go through each of these pillars in turn. And as Mitzi mentioned in the beginning, there's a short demonstration after each one. All right, so jumping into observe. This really is the foundation. We can't govern or secure something that we cannot see. So everything else in the platform really depends on getting observe right from the start. So to help frame this session, there's three main questions here. First off, do you have visibility into every agent that's running in the environment, including those that are built outside of the Microsoft ecosystem? And that second part matters a lot because a lot of enterprises have agents from several vendors already. And a part that might surprise you all is that third-party agents built by non-Microsoft developers can still show up in your tenant without an admin ever explicitly approving them. Next question. Can you easily understand what those agents are doing, where they're running, which tools they're using, how often they're being executed, and by who? Third question, how are you handling and managing your ownerless agents? So for example, someone builds an agent, they move teams, and that agent keeps running with live credentials. This happens a lot more than persons expect. And according to a report from Microsoft last year, about 29% of employees have turned to unsanctioned AI agents for their work tasks. Unsanctioned meaning that these are agents that no one approved. They show up on a work email, the employee gets a free trial, and they just start going with them. And this isn't necessarily a policy problem, but it's a visibility issue. The employees will continue to find tools that make them faster and more efficient. We need to be able to see this and determine if we want to approve, block, deny it. So the first capability here that addresses these concerns is having a single registry, an area where you can register and track every agent in one place. So with the registry, you get a complete view of your agents built with Microsoft AI platforms, plus any other agent that you decide to register yourself. So on the technical side, these agents include things like Copilot Studio agents that you publish to Microsoft and Teams, agents that are being built in Foundry, Agent Builder, SharePoint agents, those built with Agent Toolkit. If you have productivity app agents like running inside of Word or PowerPoint, even the Microsoft owned agents like the researcher, the career coach, they all show up here. So third-party agents also come in through the Agent 365 SDK. So if your organization is building something on another platform, you can still bring it here under this same registry. As you can see on this list, we have agents from GenSpark, from Manus Incorporated, etc. The SDK is simply how you get your non-Microsoft agent to register itself with Adrian 365. It gets its own identity, it gets an owner and an audit trail, and you can govern it just like any other native agent. Again, practically, this means you have one inventory for your auditors instead of having 3 or 4 different documents or spreadsheets to gather all the agents. Next, want to touch a bit on visibility. And visibility isn't only a security story, it can also show you value. So once your agents are registered, you can measure their effectiveness, their adoption, the quality, the performance, the speed that they're taking to complete tasks, and their business impact. This is how you answer your CFO's questions on what value, what cost savings, or what reduction in task time that we're seeing since we've introduced these agents. If you have a claims processing agent, for example, at an insurance company, you can detect through these metrics, are your cases closing faster, are they closing more accurately, and by how much? It can also tell you what to turn off. Some agents get built, they get used maybe once or twice, and then they sit in the background and they quietly cost you money. So as we see on this screen, there's this top agents in your organization. We get a breakdown of our top agents sorted by the active users, as well as the change in those users over time. We also see our total agent responses. We see how much Copilot credits each agent is using. And we can break this down into more detail. We go into more detail on each agent. Next up is visualization. And this view that we're looking at here is the agent map. So here you can see how your agents fit into the broader ecosystem, how they connect to each other, and how they behave over time. And this matters a lot as your agents develop and they become more advanced. They will increasingly start calling on other agents. In a manufacturing setup, for example, you may have a demand forecasting agent feeding a procurement agent, which is writing something to your ERP. When something goes wrong, this view here helps you trace that chain quickly instead of having to guess which link failed. In this example on screen, we have this comms agent, which is actually interacting with 3 other agents that we can see and our learning guide resource. If this agent was referencing a certain SharePoint site or individual documents, that would also show up on this map. Now, this point here is about extending our oversight with rule-based reporting. So different rules need different views of the same information, and we can make reporting rule-based in Adrian 365. So your security leaders, for example, can get a view built around agent risk. So exposure, missions, incidents. Your business leaders might want a view that's based more on usage, the impact, the business metrics. This is allowed in Adrian 365. The same underlying registry, just different lenses. So it saves your team from having to build and create custom reports by hand for each department. It's all baked here into Adrian 365. Now, just want to take a moment to go into the actual environment and see some of this in practice. Show you all how you could observe your agents, how you can spot and stop agent sprawl before it grows. So let me get my environment up and I will show you all what Adrian 365 really looks like. All right, here we are. Okay, so this is our regular M365 Admin Center. Some of you may already be familiar with this view. Adrian 365 is baked right into this existing area. So we have a little overview page, Copilot and agents, your next frontier. We have early access to Adrian 365, and we can actually view this within Adrian 365. So we're going to open up the agents and we're going to take a look at the overview. This is our first initial page. And we can already see a lot of information specific to our agents. We can see the agent registry. So how many agents we have in our organization. We can see how many of those users are interacting with these agents currently. It's just 3 of them. We can also scroll down a bit and see some actions for us to take. So we have some pending requests for agents. This can mean users have created and published agents, and they need to be approved before the rest of the organization can use them. Or we have individuals that want to use specific agents and they don't have access to it. There's also some agents here without owners. So we have 17 agents. This looks like a Copilot Studio agent and probably 2 data agents that are built in Fabric. We can assign these owners directly from here, sorry. Scrolling down a bit more, we have our agent analysis. So we can see how many of the agents were created by our organization, how many of them were created by external partners. We see the platforms that are being used to build our agents. So most of the agents in the organization built with Copilot Studio. We have some being built with other tools and registered in the tenant. We have AI Foundry, the toolkit, and the basic M365 Copilot agent builder as well. So we get a lot of insight just from this overview page. Sorry, moving to the all agents page now. This is where we see our registry and our list of agents. We see the total agents, those with missing owners, those that have been blocked as well. So going into the map view now, this was a map view we mentioned earlier. It's just a different way for you to visualize where your agents are, where they've been created. So I can actually zoom in here. I can scope, I can filter if I want to look at my agents that have been created specifically in Foundry. I can filter by platform. I have 34 agents here built in Azure AI Foundry. I can also zoom in and actually see these agents, which particular agents I'm referring to. Now I'm going to pick one here, for example, but I'm going to do it from another tenant that will give me a bit more insight. 1 second. Let me choose an agent that I want to dig into. Okay. 1 second here. Okay, so we have same agent map view. I'm going to look at these 2 agents that are sort of highlighted here on the screen. First off, I have this Zava store agent, and I can see what it's interacting with. So this agent is pulling information from Excel, from Fabric, from another agent here in Copilot Studio, and some custom built agents as well. I'm gonna open up the view, and immediately we get an overview of this agent. A description, I can see it's currently available to all my users. There are some risks associated with it, which we'll touch on. It was published by my organization, so it was built in-house. I can see an owner, I can see where it was built, where it's currently published to, when it was last updated. I can also go into the Data and Tools tab, and I can see the capabilities and what this agent really has access to. So it can read from OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams. It has information about the members of my organization, and it can also pull from public sites. So I can see the knowledge sources directly through here. There's some websites, there's some Excel documents. This agent is also using some MCP servers. So it's pulling information from Teams, from Mail, from the calendar as well. I can get more detail on how these data and tools are being used if I go into the permissions tab. So I can see a list of the API, the different actions that my agents are allowed to do. And directly from here, I can choose to turn some on or off. So some of them have been off. I can grant them, I can revoke them directly through this interface. Now, dealing with some of the security risks, let me take a look at this other agent. This is a support agent. If I go into security and compliance, I can see 5 risks that are associated with this agent. So it has abnormal sign-in frequency, which is being pulled from Entra. The agent was also accessed by a risky user, again, pulling this telemetry from Entra. The agent also shared some sensitive content, some customer data outside of its approved boundaries. So I can go to these different sources and deal with these individual risks. I also see from Defender, there's 2 risks associated. It accessed a knowledge source that it shouldn't have. And there was actually an attempt to inject something into the prompt. There was a prompt injection attempt in 1 or more of the agent interactions. All this from within your Microsoft Admin Center without needing to go into these different admin centers. You get an overview of the risks associated with your agent. Now let me jump back out of here. and bring you all to the request page. So go to requests. I see I have 3 agents here: staffing, product backlog, product insight. These were all made by members of my organization, but they're still pending requests. So this one is pending review. I can choose to allow these 2 agents to go into production and to be accessed by my entire organization or by specific individuals or groups. There's also the catalog page, and I'll take you all to a different view to see the catalog. This is the catalog tab here, and it sort of shows you the agent marketplace. So this is Microsoft's approved channel where you can safely see all the Microsoft and Microsoft partners build agents and decide if you want to bring them into your organization. So there's a lot of different views and information that you can get just from these overviews and all agents tabs. And as we go through the rest of the demos and the rest of the slides, we'll be taking a look at some of the other tabs and features that you have access to. Actually, something I could probably do while we're on this slide, probably worth showing you all, is the Tools tab. Here I see a list of my MCP servers that I currently have available. So I'm seeing information from SharePoint, SharePoint on OneDrive, WorkIQ, Copilot, WorkIQ Teams, Outlook. All of these MCP servers are currently available to my users, and the agents can use them. If I had a need where something got disrupted, there's a risk associated with one of these, Microsoft announced that there's some issue with one, I can go into each one and I can choose to block it directly from here. Also on this view, you get an overview, a description, who published it, the URL to go to this server. But I can also choose to outright block this MCP server directly from this tab. So there's a lot more that we can do in overview, in observe, sorry, but that's just a short example of some of the main features that you'll be interacting with. Now, moving into govern. So observe for visibility, it told you what exists. Govern now decides what is allowed to exist and under what rules it's allowed to exist. So again, 3 main questions here to frame this section. First off, can you apply consistent governance across all the agents, no matter how or where they were built? So next question, how do you balance your developer freedom with central oversight? And there's some tension that happens here. If you clamp down too hard on your developer teams, they may stop asking for permissions. They can just go somewhere else and build in somewhere that you can't see. So you need to balance these permissions and these configurations with your developer freedom. And can you identify and retire your low value or your ownerless agents before they come at a risk or a cost? There was a report published by Deloitte this year, and it found that only around 21% of companies report having a mature model for governing their autonomous agents. So roughly 4 in 5 organizations are still improvising their agent control. If you're in some sort of regulated sector like banking, energy, pharma, this gap is something that your regulators will ask about. So governance really starts at day 1, at onboarding. With Agent 365, the agents are onboarded and approved through a single IT-controlled flow. And the moment one is approved, a policy template is applied automatically. So policy template really is just a predefined bundle of settings that you'd otherwise have to configure by hand. So who owns it, what it's allowed to reach, what data the agent can handle, what information gets logged, and when it comes up for review. You can also assign policies built from Entra and Purview to the agent here. And you can have more than one. So a low-risk agent that's summarizing your internal documents for the entire organization doesn't need the same template as one that is touching and updating customer records. So you can tier the agent and you can let the template match the risk that's associated with each of these agents. And the point here is where this happens in the life cycle. An agent doesn't get governed later when someone notices that it exists. It starts as being governed, and the controls are on before it's able to process anything. Next, we want to be able to control what agents can access and what they can do. This is where least privilege comes in, being applied to non-human identities. So you can control which users, which data, and what tools an agent can use. and which other agents it can talk to. So a simple example, an agent that orders supplies for your organization doesn't need to access payroll data. And we can control that at the application level here. We can give the agent what the job requires and nothing else. And briefly, as we saw during the demonstration, when we're having hundreds and thousands of agents, manual governance doesn't scale well past maybe a handful of agents. So governance should be rule-based. You define your lifecycle policies and the platform will enforce them automatically. So you can expire your agents that have been inactive for 90 days. You can flag agents that no longer have an owner, or you can outright block agents that trigger some policy or some rule threshold. So it's the same principle as automated account cleanup. You set the rule once and it runs quietly in the background. So this rule we see here on screen, for example, reassign ownerless agents to a manager. So if ever an agent's owner is removed, maybe their account is compromised, the user leaves the organization, or they switch teams, that user's manager gets assigned as the new owner of the agent. So there are a lot of rules that we could configure. So just going through this one, there's a condition here that asks if the owner equals not found, then we're taking this particular action of assigning the owner to the manager. Very simple, and it's important that every agent, have an owner, someone that's responsible for keeping the agent in check, reviewing it, making updates to it, etc. This can be done through rules within Agent 365. Audit readiness now is the next piece. So using Purview's audit search here, you get traceability of an agent's actions and interactions. So items like who approved the agent, what it accessed, how it behaved. For a bank that's maybe facing a regulatory review, this could be the difference between a 10-minute query and a half-day evidence hunt. And the key here really is that the login of this evidence is there from the start. As soon as the agent is approved and it's published, we get these logs. So through Purview Audit Search, for example, just looking at this screen, we can see the user who invoked the agent, the procurement agent specifically, and we can see the actions that the procurement agent took, some calls, executing tools. If we click on these individual items, we get more detail on exactly what happened in that moment. And sort of related to that, sticking within Purview, is compliance and safety risk. So you can establish data safety and compliance controls that can help you detect and investigate agent interactions that are falling outside of your policies. And this also covers unethical or inappropriate interactions too. It's not just about how your agent is handling data. If you have customer-facing agents, public agents, and they're talking to customers, that conversation is also your organization speaking. So there are other features within Purview like retention and e-discovery that are integrated and run through Purview, and they land directly in the compliance process that ideally you already have in place. So looking at communication compliance here, just going through the screen, there was some unethical behavior detected in our AI agents. And we have this specific example in a Teams group chat. We see the individual and we see the prompt that was submitted. It's asking to draft a persuasive email that shows that we should be the person that gets this contract. This isn't ethical. This is something that would trigger an alert. It can alert your AI admins or your security compliance persons of actions like this. It can take you to Purview. Through here, you can choose to resolve the incident, tag it, escalate it, notify, assign it to a different individual for investigation, etc. So it's going to show a short demonstration now of how we can govern agents that are at risk. So I'm going to jump back into the environment. Let me a second to do so. We are right. Yeah. Okay, so back in our M365 Admin Center on our All Agents page, we took a look at the registry, the map, the requests, etc. Now we're looking at some of our agents at risk. So on this page, it says we have 6. It needs to update because we have 5 agents listed here. We can see they're all currently available. We can see the platform that some of them were built on. the total risks and the active users that are interacting with these agents that have risks. We can see if it's been shared with all users, if it hasn't been shared, when it's been updated, when it's been used. So this Caldova agent here has the most risk tied to it. So let's take a look at this particular agent. Okay, have some details. So have some details about the agent. I can go into security and I can actually review these items. So this is going to pull me directly into Purview. I have some Purview protections that are being applied. So the agent's activity is being monitored, protection for sensitive data is on, and there's also an assessment that I can run, an AI baseline assessment within Purview itself. So let me go to review, and it's going to take me to Purview, and it's going to open up this insider risk management page. I'm under agents, and I can see the alerts specific to this agent. So in particular, there's two items here. They were triggered on the same day, just a few minutes apart. And I get some more insight into what caused this alert. So today, there were 5 events where the agent was exposed to a risky prompt. There were also 5 events where the prompt contained sensitive information, and I can already see this sensitive information type that was included here. So some information to do with Project Falcon. I can see the severity is pretty high, the risk score is pretty high, and this alert needs reviewing. Directly from here, I can choose to confirm the alert. I can create a case and gather evidence around the activity. I can assign it to my other security persons for them to look at, all from within this one view already. Let me close off here now, and we can also look at our agents without owners. So I have a lot of agents. Some of them are available. Some of them are built in Google Cloud, Anthropic, built in my organization with Agent Builder. Some of them have a lot of risks, and they're actively being used by a lot of users. This finance agent, for example, there's 58 users interacting with it. So I can click on the agent, and directly through here, I can assign an owner to it. So I get some overview. I can see it was published by Neha. Maybe Neha left the organization. Maybe she moved teams. This agent no longer has an owner. So I can directly assign the owner through here, or I can do it through the policies that we talked about. So if I go to agent, I go to settings, I have a rule here called reassign ownerless agents created with Agent Builder to manager. So if I have any agent built with Agent Builder, and for some reason the owner disappeared, they're no longer responsible, it's going to automatically get moved to whoever that individual's manager was. There's also another rule here created by Microsoft to install Microsoft agents. Now we can choose to turn this on or off, but just what this rule does, it installs Microsoft published agents for all users in your organization. So anytime Microsoft brings out a new agent, they bring out the prompt coach or the career coach, as long as the publisher was Microsoft themselves and it isn't already showing up in the tenant and it isn't blocked, it's going to install on all of my user accounts. Now, you can choose to remove this if you want. If you don't automatically want all users to have access to these agents, we can govern that from here as well. So just going back to it as well, going to the all agents, showed the registry. You can also dig into the map a little bit more. Let me let it load. We can go to the Microsoft specific agents, and let's just say we allowed 1 or 2 of the agents, or maybe we blocked one because we weren't sure what it was doing. You can go into the Microsoft specific agents and get that insight from them. So this is the researcher agent built by Microsoft. I can see what this agent pulls from, what it connects to. So it uses a lot of other items. It pulls from the Excel agent, PowerPoint, Word, and 7 other agents. So some more insight here that you get from Agent 365. All right, so that was governed. Talking along to our third pillar here, secure. So agents are genuinely a new attack surface. So this really deserves its own treatment. And Microsoft has acknowledged that. So 3 security questions here for this section. What access policies do you enforce to block or restrict your high-risk agents? What guardrails do you have to prevent an agent from accidentally oversharing sensitive data? Oversharing really is the most common failure that we see. the agent does exactly what it was permitted to do, and that just turns out to be too much. So as I'm reading through these questions, you all can think about your own organization if you're already using agents. What access policies do you have that you enforce? What guardrails do you have for oversharing or sensitive data? And can you detect and respond to new agent-specific threats like tool misuse or shadow AI? Again, there was a report that found that 73% of organizations say that data privacy and security is their biggest AI risk. And I think this goes for more than 73% of organizations. And it is really the number one blocker to scaling these agents. So security, we're going to start with identity. In Entra, each agent gets its own identity, which means you can extend conditional access and identity protection from your users to include these agents. So the same controls that you use for people can apply here. You can restrict whether an agent can operate from certain locations, require stronger conditions if they're accessing sensitive resources. You can also block the identity outright if it starts behaving oddly. So in this example here, just looking at the screen, if the agent has high risk or medium risk, we can block it from accessing these different locations, particularly SharePoint, particularly our MCP server, our on-prem data. And this is important architecturally. Your agents stop being anonymous service accounts, right, with shared secrets that are running in the background and we don't really know what it's pulling from and how often it's accessing anything. They become managed identities that we can see and we can govern and secure. Next, preventing oversharing and data leaks. So we use Purview to give us the visibility into AI-related data exposure and to protect the data that these agents are accessing and creating. So hopefully you already have things like sensitivity labels, which your agents will inherit and honor. You may have DLP policies, which can block agents from reading or sharing sensitive content. This slide here is the profile page for a particular agent. In this case, it's a supplier agent that processes invoice and it pulls data from CRM and SharePoint. So this is what it looks like when data protection is actually watching an agent rather than just holding a policy about it. So starting at the top, we get the basics that we'd expect for any identity. We get a status, we can see who owns it, when it was created, where it was created, its actual ID. We see the knowledge sources and the tools that it has access to. So the part that really earns this page is the risk level. So this particular agent has been flagged with a high risk. And it tells us why. There's 4 instances of oversharing plus exfiltration plus instances of unethical interaction or behavior. Each of them have a count and they have a trend. So below that, there's also this sensitive activity trend area, which shows you the sensitive information types that the agent is interacting with over time. And this really is the difference between inventory and behavior, which we briefly opened the session with. Knowing that the agent exists is easy. This page really tells you what the agent did, what it can reach, and whether it's drifting from its norms, which is what you actually need. The third security capability here is threat defense, specifically threat defense through Defender. So this protects the agents from threats, vulnerabilities, different adversarial attacks, things like prompt injection, tool misuse, or an agent being manipulated into acting outside of its intended purpose. So you get detection, you get investigation and remediation with specific visibility into different attack paths. So you can see how an agent moved from one agent to another, how it connected to different resources. And a key thing to keep in mind here is that this is the same investigation that you'd run on a compromised user account. So when an employee gets phished, you don't just look at the phishing email, you look at what the employee did next. What did they sign into? What did they download? Who did they message, etc. An agent is no different. Really, prompt injection is essentially phishing an agent. Someone plants instructions where the agent will read it, and the agent acts on it, believing that it's doing its job. So the investigation should run the same way. On the screen here, we really are looking at exactly that. This is an alert list for a customer billing agent that we have with all the detections, the activity, the severity, the priority score as well. On the right here, we have one of those alerts that are opened up, and we see some insight. We see the priority, we see any evidence that was collected as part of the incident, and we have actions that we can take. We can open the incident page, go into more detail. We can manage, run the playbook, assign it, act on the case, just like you would with a user account or a device. And this is our final short demonstration here. And it's how you can defend against shadow AI from within Agent 365. So just a brief definition, shadow AI really is any AI tool that's being used for work that IT really never approved or isn't aware of. Nobody reviewed it, no one is watching it, and it usually shows up because someone was trying to work faster, got some email, wanted to be more efficient, and just pulled up and installed this agent. A little note in this section as well, although we covered Entra, we covered Defender and Purview, all under this security pillar. Demoing all of those solutions would mean walking through each of them separately, and we could genuinely spend hours going through that. So I'm staying within Agent 365 and showing you this singular view instead. But just know that the depth, the information is all there underneath when you need it. So let me hop back into my environment, and we can look at Shadow AI a bit, how it shows up in Agent 365. Okay, we're back. We're here in our admin center, and we're going into agents. So I have my agents in this particular tenant. There's 567,000 agents. Only having 9 agents at risk on a scale like this is pretty well, but we still want to remediate some of that. So there's a Shadow AI tab under here that we're going to go into, and we're going to see a list of these AIs. So here we can see Claude Code, for example, on 89 devices. We have GitHub Copilot, that's on 345 of our devices. And there's this odd one, OpenClaw, here that sits at the top. So I'm going to click on OpenClaw, and I get some insight into what it is. It's a self-hosted autonomous AI agent that integrates with chat platforms, perform tasks across different systems, different apps and services. I can also see all of the devices that this agent is installed on. You can see when it was last seen, the operating system of my machines, etc. I can also go into the security policy. So now you're at a point where you need to make a decision. So we haven't heavily touched on Intune, but it also integrates here with Agent 365. I have some policies built already in Intune that I can push to this particular agent. First one is to continuously detect this agent on managed devices. So as long as I have my machines enrolled and synced with Intune, it will find OpenClaw on managed devices. I also have another option here. I can completely block OpenClaw. So I cannot explicitly remove the file or the binary, but I can completely prevent its ability to run in any capacity. And I can apply these policies that are built in Intune to this agent. The policy updates, it's been updated, policies may take up to 8 hours to become active, and OpenClaw will no longer function on these machines. And that really is the extent of this demo. Pretty short, pretty simple, but Shadow AI is an increasing threat area, and Agent 365 already has some built-in capabilities to prevent against it. Microsoft is still working, they're still building on it. This is really only the beginning of Agent 365 and what it can do. And that's really the end of the 3 main pillars of Agent 365, but just want to give a quick word on the ecosystem. Agent 365 isn't just for Microsoft built agents. There's a continuously growing set of partner and third-party agents that plug into the same control plane. You can actually browse the current showcase at this link, this AKA MS Agent Showcase. And the point is that you're not really locking yourself into a single agent vendor. This is not just Microsoft. It's SAP, it's NVIDIA, it's Box, a bunch of different providers tied in. And just talking now a little bit about how all of this is packaged, I'm going to briefly touch on Microsoft 365 E7, what Microsoft is calling the Frontier Suite. So E7 really brings four main things together. First, there's E5, which you all may be familiar with, the high-grade secure enterprise work license. There's also the Entra Suite, which is now included, which builds on Entra P1 and P2. There's also Microsoft 365 Copilot, of course, your AI assistant that built for work. And we have Agent 365, which we went through today, the control plane for our agents. So Work IQ, really, as you'll see on the bottom there, it underpins all of these functions. It really features of grounding the AI in your organization's data. And E7 is available with or without Teams. So if you're already on E5, think of this as an extension to what it is you own rather than a replacement. And in case you all wanted more of a breakdown, this slide just shows the more commercial picture. So individually, you're looking at E5, $60, the Entra Suite at $12, Copilot and Agent 365, a total of $45. Bundled together, E7 includes all of this for $99 with Teams. And the table just gives you a breakdown into the different features that you get with each of these, and they're all included with E7. And these lines at the bottom here might seem a little new, but hopefully a little more familiar after today's session. These are the Agent 365 features of Observe, Govern, and Secure. So a quick little note on how we can help. Working with a Microsoft partner is usually the fastest way to turn things like this from a demo into actual deployment. And there's two primary ways that Davin offers assistance. First is the AI readiness and governance. So this starts with an assessment of your current readiness versus where you need to be, what your plans are. So identifying which agents matter the most and designing the guardrails to fit your industry and different regulations that you might have. We also bring experience with the process transformation part, because this isn't just a technology rollout, but it's really a change in the way that your business works and gets work done. The second part is enablement. This comes in the form of training, hands-on, in person if preferred. And this training goes for both your end users to help them get the most of their Copilot and their agent interactions, but also for the admins, like most of you all here today, helping to equip you all with the necessary skills to configure, to manage, and monitor AI within your organization. So that's really it for the session today.